Welcome to the Bringing Intimacy Back show, where intimacy is real. If you desire to intimately connect with yourself, your significant other, children, family, friends, community, and higher power, this show is for you. We explore intimate topics, inspiring life stories, spirituality, and insightful tips on strengthening relationships. The show is hosted by Dr. April and her co-host, Coach K. Let's get this episode of the Bringing Intimacy Back show started. We share with you today the secret power to intimacy to create a life you love or love the life you create. Now, here's your host, Dr. April, and co-host, Coach K.
Welcome to the Bringing Intimacy Back show, where intimacy is real. And if you're out there listening live, please feel free to send us any questions or comments about what you think of the show or anything that is going on dealing with our topic today. So welcome, Coach K.
Hello, hello. Thank you. Happy to be here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's been a while. It's been about almost 2 weeks. Yes.
Yes. You are off with your retreat.
Yes. I did an intimacy retreat in Costa Rica, which was beautiful. Helping couples work through their issues and a natural part of the world. And it was amazing to see that formation and transformation.
I can imagine.
Yeah. When, because it's a little different when you do retreats, because you actually can spend more time with the couple.
Yes. An intimate space. Intimate time.
Yes, definitely. And with couples and even with all the stuff that's going on in the world today, one of the things is conflict.
Yes. I've seen a lot of that happen here, especially as of the last 2.5 years. It seems like it escalated a little bit.
Yes. With couples. And then I'm just, even as I think about the last few weeks, for the whole world, there's been so much more conflict.
Yes, a lot of it, and lots of tension.
Yes. And the one thing that I was just thinking about, a lot of times we talk about how with sex, we don't learn that much information growing up, but also even with conflict.
It is rare that you learn proper techniques for diffusing situations outside of the don't do it, just walk away. But sometimes that don't always work. What are those, intermediate steps in there? So I'm glad that that's a part of today's show.
Yes. I'm excited to actually sit there and talk about how do we handle conflicts in our lives, because as we all know that life is going to bring conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
Each of us are going to have something.
Absolutely. And it's how you handle it that matters, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's exactly what you say. It's how you handle, how you look at it, how you deal with it. But for many people, they haven't been taught that. So
absolutely.
Yes. So on today's topic, that is what we're going to get into. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about our charity of the month. It's called Our Mother's Home. I'm actually going to be a guest speaker or keynote speaker tomorrow with them. And what they do is they provide an environment for young moms to foster and take care of their babies. So, and they teach them how to be moms and teach them how to be parents, which is wonderful.
That is, because there's no real rule book, I tell you that.
So
to have some support is necessary.
Yeah, definitely. And even I was just thinking just this whole thing about conflict. I was in supervision and they're talking about a case and the mother never said no to her kid. So can you imagine when the kid gets into their first conflict, and if she continues this as an adult, how that's going to roll out?
Absolutely. When I did HR, I met a lot of adults that were not told no as children.
Yes, definitely. Yes. But let me tell you guys who our special guest is. His name is Jerry Few. He is a conflict resolution coach. So that's what he specializes. And he helps leaders advance in their career and life journeys. He has taken on several pharmaceutical leadership roles, and he has started coaching since 2017 and helping people and Asian Americans and other professionals with conflict that they encounter at work, with their culture, and with themselves. And that's pretty special.
Yeah. And it seems like one of those things, like once you do it, it's like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Because it's so needed.
Yeah. And actually, I like how he also put with their culture, because the Asian American culture and other cultures, and including my own, we've had a lot of challenges in the last few years. And so I'm so looking forward to having him come on and to talk about his range of coaching services and to enlighten us about conflict resolution. Yes. So we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk with Jerry Few about conflict resolution.
Are you wanting a vacation in paradise? A vacation to rekindle the passion. A vacation without the kids. A vacation where you can learn how to communicate, where you and your partner actually hear each other and gain insight. If so, vacation counseling is your next vacation. Dr. April Brown has created vacation counseling in Southwest Florida as a perfect option for you and your partner. Our retreats are one couple at a time. We have a variety of packages available to choose from, including virtual couples retreats. If you and your partner are interested in vacation counseling, please visit us at vacationcounseling.com for more information on pricing and packages. Also, follow us on Instagram and Facebook. To keep track of the latest news, stories, activities, or coupons on vacation counseling and Dr. April's other services, we encourage you to sign up to receive a monthly newsletter called Intimate Connections at draprilbrown.com. Remember, if you and your partner are struggling with communication and intimacy, and you all are looking for a retreat to connect, vacation counseling can be your next vacation in Southwest Florida.
Welcome back to the Bringing Intimacy Show, where intimacy is real. I want to welcome Jerry to the show. Welcome, Jerry.
Hi, everybody. Just for clarification, my last name is pronounced Fu. I should have clarified that before the show.
Oh, Fu. Okay, sorry.
People get tripped up on it all the time, so not a problem. But
okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, yes. So, Jerry, you are an expert in conflict.
Yeah, I've dealt with too much already.
Okay. I want to know, how did you even get started in that?
Yeah. Basically, with my coaching business, there's this background of conflict aversion. First, in my own, culture, I grew up with, Taiwanese parents, and you just don't talk about difficult things in front of the kids, right? And when difficult things come up, you just kind of suppress them, and no one really feels good about it. And then you apologize, but you're not sure if it was resolved properly, right? And then I get into a customer service job, with retail pharmacy. And even if you try to stand your ground, right, irate customers will just call your supervisor and complain, and then they just tell you to apologize, and you just go home wondering if you even have a spine, or even, just dealing with this kind of thing, right? And so you fail enough times, and you wonder, I really want to avoid this. I hate, struggling and failing at conflict. And it isn't until, I realized that you study the struggle a little more closely, right? And then you say, okay, who is someone that I know that has already solved this problem? Or what's a book out there, that might have some useful tips, right? And you start to take these ideas, right, from books like The Four Conversations by Jeff and Lori Ford. That helped a lot in terms of recognizing, okay, if there is a broken expectation or a miscommunicated or mismanaged expectation, just get curious, right? If you're lacking courage, just get curious, right? And that's one way to say, okay, well, I don't want to charge forward, like blind, recklessly, right? but maybe I just take a closer look at it and study it, maybe gain a little empathy for the other side, because maybe it is just a misunderstanding. And so when you realize that running from it doesn't make you any better at it, and that you realize, hey, you know what, even if I try and fail, I'd rather just be honest and get what's on off my chest, so I can go home and say, well, even if like the relationship's broken or even if it's still unresolved, at least I know I can be okay with the fact that I spoke my piece. And so eventually, right, you take on enough leadership positions and you have no choice but to deal with conflict, because if you don't, and you settle for trying to stay popular instead of traded in for respect, right, you're not going to last very long in leadership. And so after enough situations, you start to study and say, okay, what do I need to do differently, right? Maybe I just find 10 seconds of courage to pick up that phone or send that email or send that text, right? I don't have to be Superman. I just need to be Superman for 10 seconds, right? And so these are some of the kind of struggles I dealt with, some of the crazier stories I've dealt with. I had to evict a roommate at one point, right? I had to confront the boss who wrote me bad paychecks. I had to deal with a guy in a church class who was sexually harassing women in the class. And I was like, it was my second day on the job as director of the class, right? And they're like, Jerry, you got to handle it. And I'm like, what? Like, you didn't give me a manual. Like, you just handle it. It's like, you got it. You got this. It's like, what? So basically all that to sum up is to say, conflict has been a personal and a professional struggle. And it is a no-brainer for me to turn around and take my experiences and the success that I've been able to experience recently, so that other people, we're not here to spare anyone their challenges in life, because life, challenges will find you if you don't look for them, but to equip them better so that, let's increase their chances of success just a little bit, right? And be more intentional in giving them more courage and confidence so that when the challenges come, that they're ready for it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I love that you are looking to provide tools for people to use ongoing.
Yeah. It's a constant struggle, right? I mean, and just as you get better, guess what? There's another challenge waiting right around the corner for you. So just keep it coming.
Yeah. Let me start off with one of the things you said first was that, and a lot of us can relate, where we come from cultures or family backgrounds where there is no discussion about, conflict. You just sweep it underneath the rug and move on.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then you get into the world and there's, conflict. And of course, in other cultures or other places or whatever, people are very upfront, Yeah. So how do you teach people to have a voice and to feel confident? I know you mentioned, I think 15 seconds of Superman.
Of courage. Yeah. So be Superman for 10 seconds, right? Like, or 15, if that's what it takes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So to elaborate on that, right? There's a great book called Humble Inquiry by Edgar Schein, and he's got some great examples of like multicultural surgical teams, things like that, right? And so there's all sorts of potential cultural tripwires. You don't realize that, I should have taken my shoes off when I got into the house, right? Like, you don't know this. And so I think, whether you use 10 seconds of courage or even 10 seconds of curiosity, right? To say, hey, just to take a posture of humility and say, hey, tell me, what's important to you? Like, what matters to you, right? And people will say things like punctuality, right? Proactive communication, right? If you're running late, just send me a text. Like, I understand if you need 5 minutes of grace period to help get set up if you're running behind. And please do me the courtesy of letting me know so that I'm not forming the wrong story about your tardiness, right?
Right.
And I think, as long as people are able to, either ask for those expectations up close, or other people are willing to gently and tactfully explain their expectations and the reasons for them, it's a much more productive and civil dialogue, as opposed to just accidentally crossing the line and then all the social awkwardness and saving face and embarrassment that can result. It's like, this could have been so much easier, right? This could have been so much smoother and more pleasant if if we handled this misunderstanding a little better, right?
Yeah. Coach K, had you ever heard of what he just said about humility? It's just,
Humility is absolutely necessary just in all avenues of life. And if we could probably start to teach it a little younger, it becomes second nature. But I just, that's something that's really, it's not a given. We don't give our little humans enough respect to teach them that humility so that they can grow into it as adults.
Right, exactly. Some people think humility is just, I'm not standing up for myself. I just lay down and be a doormat. But that is not what you're saying, Jerry. It's, you know, it's standing up and saying stuff.
Yeah. I mean, just to build on that, right? And the example that comes to mind, I wish I could remember the teacher who did this. I don't know if you know the experiment that I'm about to talk about, a reference. There was this third grade teacher who was trying to explain discrimination to her kids, right, her students. And it's a very abstract concept, right? How in the world do you explain discrimination to a bunch of third graders, right? And so what she did was, at one day, she said, all right, today, it turns out there's this study that says brown-eyed kids are academically and socially superior to blue-eyed kids. So the blue-eyed kids are going to have to wear these collars, and brown-eyed kids are going to be able to sit at the front of the class and get all this preferential treatment. And like, you saw this polarization very quickly. Like, kids who initially were friends with whoever, all of a sudden looked for like the eye color, and all of a sudden all the brown-eyed kids became friends and started to actually pick on the blue-eyed kids, right? And so this went on for like a day. Then the next day, the teacher says, oh, it turns out I had the results wrong. Turns out the blue-eyed kids are actually the superior ones. So blue-eyed kids, you're gonna take off your neck collars and put them on the brown-eyed kids, and of course all the blue-eyed kids are like, yay, right? And then now they're oppressing the brown-eyed kids because someone else said, well, hey, now we're superior, right? And now these kids had a firsthand experience of what it means to be discriminated against, but also to discriminate, and to see that people were capable of experiencing both, right? That I wasn't just the oppressed, but I was also the oppressor. It really shaped these kids' lives. And they just remembered, they said, there was a documentary that PBS did tracking the people who were as part of this class. And they talked about how they were so much more open because they experienced the discrimination firsthand, and that they were kind of shocked at themselves for being capable of doing the things that they said that anyone, because you talk to anybody, right? Anyone will be like, oh yeah, discrimination's bad. But then it keeps happening. So what's the problem, right?
You didn't experience it.
Exactly, right.
Yeah. And sometimes people are afraid to speak up about those things. And I'm even thinking in the sense of work environments, how, as you guys know, toward the end of last year and the beginning of this year, so many people left their jobs. How do you handle conflict, Jerry, when you have conflict at work? I mean, that's like your bread and butter,
Yeah, no, it's an ongoing experiment. I'll give an example, in one of my tougher moments, but ultimately later successful moments. So there's an ongoing problem with punctuality with my technicians. And so the funny thing is, one technician in particular, we'll call her Emily. So Emily is late, 30 minutes late, right? And then even after she shows up, it takes another 15 minutes getting coffee, and she's lollygagging and cutting up. And so now we've lost an hour, and I'm basically paying her for 15 minutes of goofing off, right? Even after we've already lost the 30 minutes of labor. Right. And so in my own conflict aversion, and, because I'm still conflict averse, I just have a system to compensate for it. Right. And so, I have a group meeting, right, with everybody, explaining the value of punctuality, why it's important, and the effects that it doesn't. So it's like you're talking to everybody, but you're hoping the smart bomb will actually, land in her brain, right? So you're just kind of dancing around the issue, and you're just like, well, if I cover enough ground, surely she'll understand. I'm talking to everybody, but I'm really talking to her, right? And then so she, Emily says, you know what? You're right. I need to show up sooner, and she proceeds to be late for the next 5 days, and. So now what do I do, right? And at this point,
is she trying? Do you feel like she's trying to be on time?
Well, it's not a question of effort; it's a question of results at this point, right? Like if I learned anything along my journey, right, you're not being paid to tell stories as to why you're not getting the job done,
Right.
You're being
Right.
paid to get a job done. And so, you know, by now I knew the consequences. I mean, I was already seeing it in my team. Like the rest of my team was resentful, right? Like no one's being productive because they're annoyed at the fact that Emily is still late, despite her best of intentions, right? And so now it's like, okay, now I need to write her up because like coaching her, you know, individually wasn't working. Having a group meeting, we've given her more than enough chances to say, hey, tighten up, like step up your game, right? And so now it's like, okay, now it's like any parent disciplining their child, right? You're just kind of like, okay, I hate that I'm gonna have to cause you pain, but nothing else I've used has gotten through to you, so I know this is the last resort, and I'm hoping I don't have to do this again, right? And so I would tell her, hey, look, you know, we had a meeting about punctuality, you still showed up late, and this is unacceptable, right? And so this is strike one. It doesn't have to be anything more than that, but I just need you to, I'm hoping this will get your attention, right? And of course, then they go through the excuses. Well, hey, traffic's, you know, terrible, da, da, da. It's like, well, how, you know, why are we paying you the same money that we're paying them? And why do we have to lower our expectations for you if you expect to be paid the same as the rest of the technicians, right? And I'm not saying this to pin her. I'm just asking, like, help me from a boss standpoint. You know, if I'm paying people the same, how do you think this comes across as a boss? Like, and now I'm going to lose respect from the whole team because I'm basically playing favorites with you, right? And so the only difference I would add in showing grace, as someone who's been fired and been written up, is that, hey, like land it on a good note, right? With reassurance and say, hey, look, we like you here, we want you here, and in order to stay here, show up on time, right? Hey, we wouldn't want you here unless we cared enough to give you the feedback to make sure that you stayed on good terms, right? And that's something I think I learned along the way, is recognizing, hey, you know, I'm holding you to a higher standard because I believe you can meet it. And, you know, unless you actually mean that though, like it doesn't work, right? But those are like some of the key phrases that I know I've had to hear and also had to give, because it's like, hey, why are you so tough on me? And it's like, because I see the potential in you and I don't want you to settle for less. Right. When you see things like that, I mean, why wouldn't you want to run through walls for a guy? Right.
So, Jerry, kind of what I'm hearing, I call it a little bit of sandwich. I call it sandwiching. When I do it in couples counseling, it's a general startup. But is that what you're saying, where you have a piece of bread? Like if there's a conflict and you're, as a leader, and you bring someone in, you compliment them, you know, like, you know, you're doing a great job. However, I need you to be on time.
Actually, I don't do that.
You don't do that? Okay. Does that work? Does it work?
You don't.
No?
Well, no, I mean, it does, because you want to just cut to the chase, right? I mean, and you can disagree with me if you want, but this is what happens with the sandwich method. Hey, you know, we like you. And then they wait for the but. They're like, okay, the other shoe's going to drop sooner or later, right? And as soon as you hear the but, right, all of a sudden they're like, oh, here it comes. This is what they really wanted it for. Instead of just cutting right to the choice, it's like, we are here to talk about your punctuality. And then, you know, they might have the defenses up, but it's just like, at least because the most successful thing you can do is not blindside them, right? Or just like try to bait them and switch them, because you'll notice, right? And what I just said, I said, we like you here, we want you here, and in order to stay here, right? It's different when you say and versus but, right?
That's true. Definitely. I would agree with you on that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So yeah, I learned, you're just like, no, don't just rip the Band-Aid off. Just cut to the chase, and it's just going to be easier for everybody, instead of being like, well, I got to butter them up because, you know, I don't want to. But as soon as you like, it feels like bait and switch. If someone did that to me, I would just be like, oh, now I'm on guard until they want to get to what the meat of the issue, right? So that's just me. And people can disagree, but this is just what works in my own experience. It's just like, hey, something's come up. I need your help discussing it, and that's all you need to say, right? You don't even need to compliment them, right? You just be like, hey, I just need your help, right? When you position yourself as a guide, right? It's just easier when people realize, oh, he's actually on my side. Like, I'll let me unpack an example I hinted at earlier. Like with this guy, we'll call him Nick. You know, Nick is, women are coming to me and they're like, hey, you know, Nick is harassing women in the class. You got to go deal with it, right? And so I call up Nick, right? And I'm just like, hey, Nick, you got a moment? It's like, yeah, now's a good time. It's like, okay, hey, so something's come up, right? There's some pretty serious accusations about you about sexually harassing women in the class. And he's like, I don't know what they're talking about. That's not me. That can't be me. And I'm just kind of like, okay, look, Nick, look, I wasn't there, right? This just came to my attention. And even though I don't have a hand in this, it is my responsibility as director of this class to address this, right? So here's how I see it, Nick. Here's 3 possibilities. Like, let me shift to the same side of the table. So I'm showing you, hey, look, I'm just trying to point out how you best navigate this situation given these accusations, right? And we say something like, okay, Nick, possibility number 1, you are right and they are wrong. Like, you are telling the truth and they are like, interpreting it differently, right? So some kind of misunderstanding. All I need you to do then, if that's the case, go up to them, ask what exactly the misunderstanding is, figure out what behavior you're accidentally doing that's offending them. Just stop, apologize, and that's it. That's all it has to be, right? Possibility number 2, they are right and you are wrong, which means you are lying to me, and that means you need to go apologize for what they're saying you're doing and make sure it doesn't happen again. And we're going to keep a close eye on you, right? Because that's not acceptable. Or possibility number 3, you insisted you are right. They insist that they are right, which means now it's their word against yours. And I have to ask you to leave because I've known them longer than I've known you, right? And so now, right, Nick's like, okay, this isn't comfortable, but Jerry's not here to like run me off. He's actually showing me how to, in my shoes, how do I best do this, right? Yeah. And so, unfortunately for him, it turns out option number 2 is actually the right one, and we never saw him again. But that's besides the point. The point is that, hey, in conflict, right, you do have to kind of take the situation head on initially, right? Just say, hey, I need your attention right now. And then you immediately shift to say, hey, so there's this common problem here that we're both seeing, right? And I just need your help in figuring out what the best solution is and to get your input on how to make sure we don't have this problem again and that we can get back to a healthy, enjoyable relationship.
Yeah, that approach, I'm familiar with that approach, especially in the termination phase. I had a manager who always wanted to start with the, nice, subtle violins. And I was like, no, that's awkward for me, number 1. If I'm being terminated, I just want to just terminate me at this point because I would have gotten enough warnings to get to this place. Don't butter me up to take the knife and then cut me in half. Just cut the bread. But I think maybe with children, I think the sandwiching helps a little bit more because
that's true.
Their feelings are totally different than ours as adults.
It is. And the sandwich method might be a nice way to just kind of ease them into something and say, hey, and I think in any case to emphasize the benefits of the conversation, right? To say, hey, look, I like you a lot. I love being around you. And I'm struggling with some things in order to get back to, the fact that I do like you at the end of the day, right? Or I like being around you. I like being your friend. Here's what I'm struggling with. And here's what's hurting our friendship. So please help me figure out how to get past this hurt so that we can go back to having a good friendship, right?
So, Jerry, in the sense of the conflict resolution, you said about providing different opportunities and letting him know, what are the different avenues. Do you do the same in the sense of personal conflict?
I mean, it can be, right? Like, just depending on the situation. So I'll give another example because examples are the best way to study things, right? So, so like an example that I like is, so let's say a friend of mine comes over and it's like, hey, I'm in town, I'm in town for a couple of days. Can I stay over at your place and we can hang out and stuff like that, right? And, that's like, yeah, sure, right? And I will tell him, hey, look, you're staying over at my parents' house. Understand, I need you to be aware, right, of the expectations they have of any guests that stay in our house, right? Because typically my mom won't do that, right? My mom just lets them be who they are, show, let them save face, even if they walk all over the house with their shoes on and they don't make their bed and then they leave hair in the shower once they're done. And then she'll complain about them and then tell me not to invite them back, right? But what if we did something different where I give my friend a heads up and say, hey, look, you're a carefree guy and that's great. And you're going to have to learn that my parents' expectations won't jive with that, right? If you expect to be asked back to this house, here's what you need to do, right? Make sure you leave the bedroom cleaner than when you found it. Make sure the bathroom is spick and span, right? Make it look like no one even ever stayed here, right? whether you think it's fair or not, it's my mom's house and you're going to have to accept it on her terms, right? You don't have to take my advice, right? You could disregard it. It is your decision, so long as you understand the consequences of your decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, I joke about this, like if I ever had a kid, right? And I can hear him going, Dad, I don't want to do my homework. And I'd be like, okay, so don't. And they're like, really? And you're just like, are you willing to take the F? Well, no. It's like, okay, so do your homework.
Yeah,
not my
put it
problem.
back into court.
Yeah. Not my problem. You don't have to do your homework.
Right.
Like, yeah, just know the consequences of not doing it. So,
Right.
hey,
Yeah, but there are some people who don't mind the consequences.
well,
I don't know. Yeah, in the sense of even the thing about roommates, or yeah, where they just leave a mess,
Mhm.
or and then you're like kind of stuck, and they just don't want to clean, or
Mhm.
yeah.
Well,
What do you
yeah,
do
that's-
when people could care less about consequences?
yeah, no, it's a great question. I've dealt with it myself. I've had roommates that use my stuff, don't clean it afterward, and like you don't interfere with my routine, right? Like I'm happy to share my stuff so long as I can use it when I need to, right?
Yes.
I mean, I think it's just a willingness to continue to find outside the box solutions when your preferred solution isn't working, right? If you say something like, "Hey, man, like I don't like it when you use my stuff and leave it dirty. I find it very disrespectful." And he's just like, "Yeah, you can't make me. It's a free country, right?" And you say something, okay, it's like, "Okay, well, help me out here. Are you willing to like help load the dishwasher, or can you chip in some extra money to get a maid or somebody else so that you don't have to, you can keep being a sloppy, and will like other people will compensate for your sloppiness."
Yes.
Like I wouldn't say it like that, but this is the kind of like I'm just willing to generate more ideas, right? And just say, "Hey, work with me here, man. Look,
Right.
and say, hey, I'm happy to play along and compensate somehow, as long as you're willing to meet me halfway," right? Because I mean, conflict, right? We don't like to compromise, but it really is. I mean, if you expect to get the other person on board, you're gonna have to make some concessions, right? And so, that doesn't mean, sure, if the lease is up and you're like, "All right, see y'all," right? That's fine. Just you gotta, you just gotta be smart and wise about how, you navigate that relationship. Because you definitely don't want to just be like belligerent all the time. That's not great. But you also so you need to find that mix of, "Hey, man, I want to get along with you. I am here to, it's in our best interest to get along, and I'm not going to condone a lesser standard," right? And so to navigate that tightrope, takes some time, right? It's going to take practice. It's going to take improvement. And I think that's another thing I had to learn in my own effort to get better at conflict, is to recognize, hey, you know what? Like the first couple of times, it's probably not going to go well, because if everyone were an expert from the start, we wouldn't need coaches, we wouldn't have books, we wouldn't need, resources in order to get better at it, right? And someone else has probably already solved your problem. Like they're probably further down the road. Hey, just asking for help, read a book. That's my favorite. Just like, hey, I'm a student, I don't have a lot of money. It's just like, hey, just there's plenty of these book sites. Just find the book on conflict and start reading, and see how you want to apply it. So yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, because I've had plenty of roommates where it's just kind of like, I don't like these habits, and how much should I hold back before my frustration boils over, right? As opposed to, let me ask him, "Hey, man, like tell me about the fact that you keep leaving stuff in the sink. Is there anything that I'm missing?" Right? And it's not to sound passive aggressive, because maybe they did have a bad week, right? Like I have a roommate right now. He's a great guy. We get along great, but sometimes some weeks get busy and he'll leave dirty dishes in the sink. And so it's like, okay, am I willing to give him the benefit of the doubt? Or is there a pattern that's starting to get unproductive? And then I just ask him, "Hey, man, what's going on here? Like normally you're cleaner. There's been some stuff going on. Maybe he's going through a really rough patch, and he's just like, I don't have time to clean up after myself. I'm just not focused enough to be that responsible like I normally am." And so obviously it helps when you've had a reputation that you've established, that people are more willing to give you that grace. And at the same time, it's like, hey, you can still ask him, right? "Hey, do you mind? I know you've had a rough week, and could you mind cleaning it up? I have company coming over," or something like that.
Yes.
Right?
Wow.
So yeah.
Well, Jerry, thank you so much for all that you've shared. Yes, It's been amazing. I know one takeaway I got from that is, of course, to like you said in the conflict resolution, is to be empathetic and to say, hey, help me out on this. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate everything that you've spoken about. It's been amazing.
Well, thanks for having me. Happy to share stories with you all and happy to stay in touch. So if there's a sequel you want to do, just let me know. I'll be happy to stay on your call list. So let me know.
Okay, definitely. Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, Coach K is going to let us know what is coming up next. Okay? Thanks.
It's time for the Fools in Love Couples Retreat. Join Coach K for a weekend of sharing, exploring, and learning all about the amazing world of relationships and marriage. You will explore and discuss topics such as communication, intimacy, sex, work-life balance, infidelity, and more. For further information on the Fools in Love Couples Retreat, visit foolsinlove2022.eventbrite.com or info@loveandintimacy101.com.
Welcome back to the Bringing Intimacy Show, where intimacy is real. Yes, yeah. Wow, well, that was very informative.
It was. It really was. I enjoyed all of the different avenues that he spoke on, the different examples, which are extremely helpful to have those examples. And I lived through a lot of that being in HR, so I understand all of those aspects where he was coming from. And then even with the last example, just that conversation with the roommate of, you found out that they were having kind of a rough day. And I was thinking the whole time that when you can add to the intimacy bank, even in friendship or a business relationship, it helps when it comes to the conflict resolution piece, because you have that rapport and that, intimacy bank kind of build up a little bit. So they kind of know you're not coming from this horrible place, but you have something there. So I love that conversation.
Yes, definitely. So I know your retreat's coming up soon, which is great.
Yeah, we're 3 weeks, exactly 3 weeks away from the first day. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome. Okay. And you still have openings?
Yes, I have 2 available spots that if whoever would want to come, they would need to just contact me directly, because I do have some custom made items that are being made right now. So
okay,
I go overboard.
No, okay. And thank you again. For my retreat, she also did some items for us, and that was just wonderful. The couples really did enjoy those intimacy things. Yes. Yeah. So what's coming up in the next few weeks?
All right. So I'm super excited about these upcoming shows that we have. So on March the 17th, we have How Unapologetic Self-Love Can Heal Emotional Eating with Cassie Christopher, a body positive registered dietitian who is passionate about helping women 45 years and up heal emotional eating. That's going to be a good one.
Yes.
On March the 24th, we have Kaylin Getty, who is the founder and chief lube officer of Chevay. And that's, if anyone wants to look that up, Chiabaye, in case my pronunciation is off. And then on March the 31st, we have Getting Ready for Something Real and Relationship Boot Camp, book with author and certified relationship coach Roy Buchanalana. Me and my tongue are not getting along today. And then on April the 7th, we have Renee Willestein, who is a double board certified doctor who has been working with women for over 20 years. She's going to be talking about bringing your sexy back for women's libido. That's going to be huge. And then we have some reminders, right?
Yeah. But I'm just thinking, with all these upcoming shows, it's about the female body and being healthy. And then, of course, some nice, sexy lube, which is always good. Yes. Yeah. And something real. So definitely bringing,
especially in this International Women's History Month, so it's awesome to be talking about that.
Yes. That was, definitely. I totally forgot to wish you happy Women's Month. Yes.
To you as well. We are women.
Yes.
So just a reminder to everybody that we are here live every single week, Thursdays, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then our you want to talk about our charity again really quickly?
Oh, yeah. Charities at mothershome.org. They actually have a big event tomorrow. And if you're thinking about, hey, I want to help out because it is Women's Month, and being a mother is really a special part of being a woman, check them out. They do a great job. So, yes.
Definitely much needed. So make sure you guys are following us on all of our social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. And that is Bringing Intimacy Back. And for our listeners out there, find us on, listen to us on iTunes. We appreciate if you left us a review as well, so that we know how we're doing, number one. And we want those ratings and visibility to go up so that you can always find us. So make sure those notifications are on wherever you follow us. It's been a great week.
Awesome. Yes. So I will see you next week. And this has been the Bringing Intimacy Back show. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Bringing Intimacy Back. We hope you enjoyed it. You can also find us at bringingintimacyback.com and Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter. Dr. April Brown's 5-book series, Improving Intimacy, is now on Amazon, available in Kindle, Audible, or paperback. We'll see you next Thursday live at 3:30 p.m.